Good morning, everyone. Well, good morning, good afternoon. It's noon, so you can choose. This is Peter V. Brett, author of Painted Men, or Warded Men, depends the country you are on, and The Desert Spear. We in Guy Livro are very proud to be able to bring Peter here to Fórum to speak a bit. Eugenio asked him to do a more technical session in the morning, and I'm going to let Peter talk a bit about you. It's about character construction. So he's going to talk a bit, and then you are free to ask questions, and he will answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pedro, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to come out here and be able to talk to you. I'll talk a little bit about myself first, and then I have some prepared things about characters and characterization, and then I'll open it up to questions. How many people here are writers or aspiring writers? Most of you, good, that's good. So then we can have a nice conversation. I'd like to really try and personalize it as much as I can, have some back and forth. I consider myself a relatively new writer, at least professionally. I've been writing my whole life. I wrote several novels before getting published. The Painted Man, the book that was eventually my first published novel, was actually the fourth novel that I had written. I think that that's an important thing to remember if you're an aspiring writer, is that like playing the piano, you don't sit down at the piano and play something that people want to pay to hear. It takes a lot of time and practice and craft before you reach a level where you can expect to be paid for your work. And I think a lot of aspiring writers have the misconception that you write one book and you sell it, and that's how it works. And most of the professional writers that I know have had to write several books before they reach that level. And you shouldn't think of those books that don't sell as a waste of your time. You should think of them as an investment in what you're doing. My first book, The Painted Man, came out in 2008. It's the story of a world where demons come out at night and ravage the land, and humans have been hunted almost to extinction. And the only way to protect yourself is by surrounding yourself with magical wards at night, so that the demons can't get to you. But the story focuses more on three characters, each of whom has been scarred in their childhood by a demon attack, and how that propels them to find new paths and discover new things about themselves and about the world around them. So what I want to talk about today is about my choices for those characters, and how a writer should consider these things when they're planning out their book. Stephen Hunt just did a wonderful talk on world building, and world building is a very important element to a story, but I consider it to be secondary to the characters themselves. By that I mean you want to have a setting that's exciting. You want to have a setting that is refreshing for people, that is different from what people are familiar with. You want to have an interesting magic system that people can find exciting. But what really draws people into a story is the characters. They want to be able to relate to the characters. They want to be able to empathize with them, feel what they feel. I think that a good storyteller doesn't need to have, you can tell, if you have good characters, you can tell a regular modern day story, you can tell a mystery story, you can tell a Western story, you can tell a science fiction story or a fantasy story, but the element of your characterization is the same every time. Now the introduction to this is the point of view character. And the point of view character is the one that the reader invests in, the character that the reader sees the world through. And there are several ways to approach this when you're planning out your book. Some writers will just sit down, make up a character, and put them on an adventure. I take a much more planned approach to my writing. I guess maybe I should back up a little bit. There are two general styles of writing, I think. One is the what's called free writing, where you sit down and you make up a story as you go along. And a lot of writers do this to very great effect. Stephen King is known for doing this, Charlene Harris. And so I'm certainly not in any way disparaging that type of writing, but in my experience, I tend to write myself into a corner like that. I find the story will veer off unexpectedly, and I'll find myself in a place I didn't want to be. So I plan very carefully before I write anything. And the first thing you want, when you're planning your actual story, you want to decide how you want to tell it. And so with your point of view characters, you can do that in several ways. The first way is to have a single point of view character. There are good examples of this are, say, the Harry Potter stories, where everything comes through Harry's perspective. The advantages of this is that you have a character that the readers will very much invest in. The trials of that character are something that the reader goes through. Their failures are something that the reader suffers with them. Their victories are something that the reader shares in. But the disadvantage of that style of writing is that when you want to feed information to the reader, you have to do it through one character. And that often means that you're limited in what you can do, because sometimes you'll have things happening that you want the reader to know, but you don't want your character to know. Or you want the reader to know things that your character couldn't possibly know. In examples like Harry Potter, or in, say, Robin Hobb's Assassin series, authors will have to do gymnastics like making the main character psychic in some way. Like when Harry Potter gets a headache and suddenly sees Voldemort's plan, is a plot device to get information to the reader through Harry that Harry couldn't possibly know otherwise. You'll find the same thing in Robin Hobb, where the main character has these telepathic powers that only work when it's convenient to tell the reader something, and suddenly cease to work when they could save his life. The next approach is the approach that I take, which is to have a few controlled point of view characters. This gives you a little more variety, because you can have male and female characters. You can have a character who's a warrior, a character who's a healer, a character who's very religious, a character who's not religious, and give the reader more options as to who they want to. Please.
I was not talking
so that variety, I think, is, for me at least, the more effective method, because you can have female characters that your female readers can relate to. You can have a warrior character that can handle a lot of the action scenes, and then you can have, in my case, a musician character who stays out of the fighting and has a different way of affecting people's emotions and the emotions of the creatures around them. So